St. Jude has been a beacon of hope for families in their darkest hour, and today that beacon shines farther than ever. That is our mission, and that is our promise.
What a privilege to have Marlo Thomas here. I mean, who hasn't heard of Marlo Thomas? In addition to those Emmys, there's been the Golden Globe, a Grammy, awards from groups ranging from the NAACP to the American Cancer Society. And as you saw, she's the $2 billion woman when it comes to philanthropy. One of the several reasons that she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Obama. It's an incredible resume, Marlo, and it still continues.
Yes.
So
Thank
very,
you.
very happy to have you here.
Thank you.
So first of all, I guess we do need to just go back a minute to the beginnings, and I really wanted to start with two things that every woman in this room should know. Before the TV show, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, before Sex and the City, before Insecure, you created and starred in That Girl.
That's right. That's right.
So did you set out? Look at her in that picture. So did you set out to change mindsets about single, independent women, or did you just want to play a substantive role because those parts weren't coming to you?
No, you know how they say, if you can't see it, you can't be it?
Right.
I didn't see anybody that I wanted to be.
Right.
There wasn't anybody. I mean, the role models when I grew up were historical models. Eleanor Roosevelt, Amelia Earhart, Katharine Hepburn, but they weren't on the screen. They weren't in Congress. They weren't running the news. So I was kind of on my own. And I had done a show, I'd done a pilot for ABC that didn't sell, and the head of the network, who's Edgar Sherrick, you might have met him through the years, he called me in and he said, we think you can be a TV star. We're not buying this show. Is there we're going to find a show for you to do. And they sent me a lot of scripts, and I called him and I said, all these shows, the girl is either the wife of somebody or the assistant of somebody or the daughter of somebody. Did you ever think about doing a show where the girl is the somebody? And he said, would anybody watch a show like that?
I love that.
So I pulled out of my bag, I swear to God, Betty Friedan's Feminine Mystique. And I said, Mr. Sherrick, read this. This is where it's going. And there was a wonderful advertising executive. Her name was Rena Bartos. She was the first female vice president of Gray Advertising. And she said this great thing. She said, if you want to hit a moving target, you have to aim it where it's going, not at where it's been. And she was the woman that got bikini-clad women off the hoods of cars. And I told him that, and God bless him. He said, okay, and we created That Girl together.
Well, that's an incredible story, but also the self-confidence, really, that you showed to sort of stick to something you wanted, essentially. And of course, you weren't just playing a feminist on TV. You are a feminist and always have been. And founding mother, actually, of the Ms. Foundation with Gloria Steinem. It was 1972. Women couldn't even get a credit card on their own. What happened? How did you get to that place?
To Ms. Foundation?
Yeah.
Well, I had done a project. I was about to do a project called Free to Be You and Me for my niece because I couldn't find any books that weren't so sexist. And I wanted to create a program for children that was non-sexist and non-racist. And I wanted to put the money somewhere because I couldn't get Mel Brooks and Michael Jackson and Diana Ross and all these people if I had to pay them. So I had to get them for free, and the way to get them for free was to put the money in a good place. So I called Gloria Steinem, who I had met a couple of times, and I told her about this, and I said, so is there a foundation? Is there any organization for women and children? And she said, well, there isn't one, but we're thinking of creating the Ms. Foundation for Women. Why don't you come in with us? So I did, and the first money was the Free to Be You and Me money, and the other money was going to come from the profits of Ms. Magazine. Of course, there never was one. I don't have to tell you that. You've been in magazines all your life. But the interesting thing about it was the Ms. Foundation for Women was the very first foundation for women ever. And even until maybe the last, I don't know, 10 years, there wasn't a foundation just for women. And that was a very exciting thing to do with Gloria, Pat Carbine, and Letty Cotton Pogrebin.
Yeah, I mean, how revolutionary. It's so extraordinary to think back on that. And I mean, as accomplished as you've been as an actress and an activist, really the kind of culmination of your life's kind of passions really has been the St. Jude's Hospital, right? I mean, for those who might not know it, share the extraordinary story about your father, the famous actor and comedian Danny Thomas, and how he vowed to found a hospital even before he was a well-known actor.
Well, I think all of us growing up have these things that happen to us that are monumental in shaping us. And my father grew up in an immigrant neighborhood in Toledo, Ohio, and there were Jews and Lebanese and Chinese and Italian and everybody you can imagine was there, and they were all immigrants. I don't know why in Toledo it's not a port. I don't know how the hell they all got there, but they were there. And they were very poor people, and nobody in that neighborhood went to a doctor. My grandmother had 10 babies, not with the doctor, just with her sister and some hot water.
Stunning.
And my dad remembers that little children in his neighborhood died of things like influenza and appendicitis, which are completely avoidable deaths. You should be able to recover from those things. And there was a cathedral at the end of the street. There's always a big cathedral in the poorest of neighborhoods. And he would remember seeing these little white coffins going down the street to the cathedral. So he grew up having a front row seat at the inequity of health care in this country, and it really immobilized him. He didn't realize it it was inside. And then when he made a vow to St. Jude to someday build a shrine to him if he helped him, blah, 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 all that stuff. But what happened was when he realized that he had the power, when he made it, and he was famous enough and had enough famous friends, he could create a place where children could go for free and get the best care. And that's what's exciting about St. Jude, is that children go there and their parents don't pay for the treatment, the travel, the housing, or the food.
I mean, it's such a giant sort of humanitarian vision. I can only imagine. I wish I'd known your father, because he sounds...
You would have loved him.
I mean, it was such a kind of big dream, essentially. And he made it happen, which is even more rare. And I'm so struck by the fact that no family ever receives a bill from St. Jude. It's quite incredible, I think. I mean, given our healthcare costs and the number of people without insurance, it's extraordinary. One question I really have, because whenever I see the ad, I think this actually. It's like, how do you do the triage on all the people who want to come into St. Jude with their children? Because presumably you have thousands of people contacting you with sick children, and the big heart of the organization must not wish to turn anyone away. So how do you make the selection of the people who are going to get that extraordinary access to this healthcare?
Well, usually they're referred by their doctor when the doctor doesn't feel they can do anymore.
Right.
We get many children whose parents have told me that their doctors have told them to take their child home and photograph them for memories, because they've only got 4 months left to live. I've heard this story more than one can imagine. So the doctor refers them, or the hospital refers them, or we're working on a trial, because St. Jude is a research hospital. So We don't fix scratched knees or anything like that. So if your child has, say, ALL, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which is the most common form of cancer in children, we've got that at 94% survival rate. So we can pass that on to other hospitals. So you don't really have to come to St. Jude for ALL unless you want to, unless you really need to, because most people would rather get it home if they can. But for the really hard diseases that nobody knows about, that we're doing trials about, we want all those children so that we can find out, how do we make these kids well, and why don't they get well anywhere? And what's great about St. Jude is that it is a research hospital. So the bench to bedside is like the greatest, quickest way that any child could have a chance.
And the network of the global network that you have, when you say, you can pass them along, is that also going to be free?
Say that again, what?
Well, when you pass the patients along, you said, because, the ones you don't take, but you can, make sure that they get that treatment somewhere else. Is that on the same basis, that they're not...
No, we can't pay for other hospitals.
Right.
But we can give our protocol for free to all those hospitals.
Sure, I see, yeah.
But their travel, their housing, their food, that's what you get when you come to St. Jude.
That is, it's extraordinary.
And by the way, it's not like a charity hospital.
No.
We have many wealthy families who come to St. Jude, and they always leave a large check. But we wanted to be very clear that every child gets the same first-class care, and none of them are paying customers. So there's no charity child.
Right.
Every child gets the same attention and the same first-class care, and every child has a scientist and a doctor on their case.
It's extraordinary.
That's the exciting part.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And I understand that within hours of the invasion of Ukraine, that, St. Jude started to evacuate some of the sick children there. Can you talk to us a little bit about this initiative? It's remarkable.
Yeah, it was very exciting. I went to St. Jude to welcome the Ukrainian families, and meet those mothers with their children. It was really, I can't tell you how gratifying it was to hold these women in my arms, and they cried because they knew that I was the daughter of the founder of the hospital. They were overwhelmed by the fact that it was for free. But about 10 years ago, we created something called St. Jude Global, where we have, I don't know, it was like 110 countries and hundreds and hundreds of people that work on it. We were already in Ukraine. So when the war hit, we got the children out of Ukraine, 600 kids with cancer, out of Ukraine into Poland, and then we helped to distribute them all over Europe. France and the Netherlands and Sweden and Germany, so many countries were dying to take them, wanted to take them. And then there were 8 families that the people there in Poland decided that they needed to come to St. Jude. And it was interesting, too, because one mother I met, the child had been misdiagnosed in Ukraine with a solid tumor, a sarcoma, when in fact he had leukemia. And the mother was quite upset at that. I mean, here she is in a country where she doesn't speak the language, and she's being told by this hospital that they did it wrong over there. It was, and you wasted a year with the wrong treatment. Yeah, that was very scary, but they won over her trust, and because they had to start from scratch with each child. You couldn't just take, any more than any doctor you go to. They want to give you the new blood test and the new x-ray to make their own decision as to what's wrong with you. So we had to do the same thing.
In some ways, those children ended up being blessed in the middle of catastrophe, because they probably, they would never get such care, probably, in Ukraine.
And they can't wait to go home.
Right.
The mothers, too. I couldn't believe, you know that children can't wait to go home and see their siblings and their friends. But these mothers who've come out of this war and this horrible situation, they want to go home.
Yeah, so it's incredibly moving. So, of course, now there's real synergy here this afternoon, because St. Jude taps into both Giving Circles and Giving Tuesday to raise funds, and we've heard from both of those things. So what I'm interested in is, how do you're so good at raising money, right? I mean, you're just a genius at it. How do you do that so successfully? There are a lot of people who want to raise money for causes, but they don't do it as successfully as you've done it.
It's funny, Tina, when my father passed away and I was to step into his shoes, which were pretty mighty shoes, and starting, to work on plans to raise money. And I thought, how in the hell do you raise money? I had no idea how to do that. And I started thinking about it and thinking, well, first of all, you got to know why us. If I'm going to ask you for money, I'm going to have to tell you that my mother needs an operation, that I'm going to lose my farm, whatever it is. So it's the same way, the same idea. If I go to people to ask for money, I have to explain to them, why us? There are wonderful charities, there's wonderful causes, there's wonderful hospitals. So I decided on this, that I would figure out, I would research, where were we the first, where were we the best, and where were we the only? And if I could figure that out, I could make a good case as to why we were the ones that you should give your money to. And it was a very exciting journey for me, because I got into the very thick of why St. Jude is so good and why you should give us the money. Right. And it was a great education for me, and I've been successful. You can't raise money or awareness or anything on a lie. So
it has to be an authentic
you
passion.
Better be good. You better be true.
That communicates.
That's right.
Yeah.
So able to translate the authenticity to other people.
What have you found the most successful sort of, motivator for people to give? I mean, when you had a big bequest, what do you feel are the things that have really touched people into writing that check?
The story of the children. Mm-hmm. When you see a child and speak to their mom and hear their mom, I think whenever you've seen the St. Jude commercials, it's always about a child.
Always. It's just...
and a parent. But you know that this child was going to die without us, and we can't do it without you. So we're in a contract, all of us, with that mom and that child. And I shouldn't say mom, and the dad too.
It's amazing to me how much, you've been powered along by this great sort of moral energy that you have, that you've never lost, actually. I mean, you seem to be as sort of dedicated and as genuinely authentic in the passion as that you've always been, right? It doesn't seem to dwindle with you. And a lot of younger women now are feeling, after the pandemic, that they really want to make a difference. I mean, what advice would you give them about, how you can really do that? Because it's not about tweeting a good intention. I mean, it's like, what advice would you give to people who say they do want to do these meaningful things, but they don't know how to start or where to begin?
Well, I think, first of all, you have to figure out what makes you mad. Mm-hmm. Because if you really want to make a difference, you can only make a difference if you have passion, and you're going to have passion about what pisses you off. Do women not deserve equal rights? Do black kids not deserve an equal education? Does everybody not deserve good health care? I mean, these are things to make you mad. And so you hit the streets with protest signs, and you go to legislatures, and I remember traveling around the country for the Equal Rights Amendment and trying to talk these legislatures, these who I thought were really not as bright as anybody I'd ever met, but there they were. And it's tough. But if you're mad about something, you will get something done. And you'll do that great thing, which is you'll find another person and another person. I have this theory that one person is a pest, two people are a team, but three people is a coalition. And the more people you gather around you, you can get something done. That's what Gloria Steinem and Betty Friedan and Bella Abzug and all those great women of the women's movement. I see the women on television today, all of these women who are running news shows, and it's like, my God, that didn't exist when I was a kid. And it's so wonderful to see it. And that happened because of the women's movement, absolutely.
Without a doubt. Are you surprised that since the pandemic, more women are saying they want to make a difference? I mean, how do you see the pandemic as having changed the equation of giving and of purpose?
Well, I think we all had a lot of time on our hands, and a lot of time to think, which we hadn't had before, and a lot of time to eat and drink and get fat and do a lot of other things. But I'm sure you know.
Absolutely.
But I think we did look inward, and when you look inward, you start to evaluate, right? And people were dying. Friends were sick. I lost 2 friends that died of it. And people were getting sick, and some were getting well, and some weren't, and some, it hung around a long time, and people weren't working, actors weren't working, people weren't making speeches. I mean, all the things, even St. Jude, we weren't having fundraisers. We had to do everything digitally. We pivoted immediately. So we were all pivoting in our businesses. And I think when you start to look inside and you start to see the value of life that was happening during the pandemic, and the other thing you saw is how connected we were. Everybody in the world had this virus. So if you wanted to think that you were better than anybody, or that any country was better than any other country, everybody was susceptible to this virus. And that was the one good thing that came out of the pandemic, is that we all got a good whiff of that. We're all connected, and we all have to find the cure together. We all have to find the viruses. We have to share the vaccines. I mean, there was so much work to be done in the connectiveness of it all. And I think that made us better people.
And at St. Jude's, what kind of medical situation was developing there during COVID? I mean, did you continue with the same, were a lot of sick kids coming in with that, parents who got sick? I mean, how did that change the hospital response?
Yeah, you mean the hospital, not the fundraising.
Yeah.
Well, in the hospital, we did not stop taking children, and we did not stop any programs, but we became very militarized. As you had a yellow badge, that meant you couldn't go near the children. If you had a purple badge, you could go near children. And still, nurses went home at night and could bring it home bring it back to the hospital. So we did have cases of COVID, which was scary for the children. But we made it. Everybody had to be vaccinated that was an adult working at St. Jude. At first, we didn't say that because they were learning, our staff was learning their way. But then the head of the hospital said, we have to get everybody vaccinated. We can't have children be in the least bit vulnerable to this. And it was interesting because the only people who did not want to be vaccinated were some women of childbearing age, because they were afraid what it might do to their future to have children, their ability to have children, or even what would happen to those fetuses. And they had to go because we had to save the lives of these children.
Absolutely.
So it really all came down to children in the end.
Well, I mean, you turned into the big flame holder of your father's dream, essentially, right? And you stepped into those shoes, as you say, big and mighty shoes, and you've made this your burning passion, and you've exceeded wildest dreams of what St. Jude could be. And there's a big whole Marlo Thomas wing right now in St. Jude's, right?
I have a building.
A building, sorry. It's a building. What happens when Marlo Thomas is gone to join her dad?
You mean having the Marlo Thomas Center?
Well, I mean, no, what happened? Do you have other members of your family who will take it over in terms of the passion?
You know, we were never going to do this. My father made it very clear when we were children that he used to say to us, this is my promise. I don't want you kids growing up thinking that this is your burden to carry. It was my promise. I've got it. I've taken care of it. You don't have to do it, which was psychologically brilliant because he knew the children that he had raised. And one by one, we came to it. And I remember the moment very well. It was about 4 months after my father died, and I adored my dad. I think a lot of people know that. And he died suddenly in the night of heart failure. And so nobody had any time to prepare for that. And so we were pretty decomposed for a while. And after about 4 months, I thought I should go to the hospital and I should say to them, look, I'm here if you want me to go pick up a check somewhere, make a little speech, which is what I used to do for my dad. He used to call me his bonus kid because I was famous and I could take his place a couple of times. But anyway, I went there and I was holding my tears in. I was scared to go inside because I thought I'm going to lose it, the minute I walk in there. And I didn't want to cry in front of the parents and the children when they have enough heartache of their own. Anyway, I got myself together. I went inside and there was this party going on. And these little kids were running around in little, little party hats, and there was confetti and the streamers and balloons and cake and ice cream. And I said to the nurse, "Whose birthday is it?" And she said, "Well, it's not a birthday party. It's an off-chemo party."
Oh, gosh.
It just, honestly, I just lost it. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, my gosh. What a movie.
These kids were celebrating one child's turn for the better, and these mothers and fathers and grandparents had tears in their eyes because if this little kid could make it, maybe their kid would make it. And just at that moment, you must know this, it's so wonderful. The tears were pouring down my face and into my ears and down here. And this mother came over with this little girl. She was about this high. She was bald, and she had a little pink dress on, a little pink hat, a little pink tie around her little bald head. And the mother said to her, "Do you know who this lady's daddy is?" And the little girl said, "Yes." And the mother said, "Who?" And she said, "St. Jude." That was it. That was it.
She made the sale. That is absolutely.
It must have been manipulated from above.
That is a wonderful story. Well, thank you so much, Marlo. One of the things that's been so inspiring today, I think, is just to hear from so many people who so many women who didn't think this was going to be what they would do. It's almost like nobody here has said, well, I always knew I was going to do that, and I leapt forward and I grabbed the brass ring. No, it's all about a gradual journey of understanding yourself and knowing where you're going to go, and also taking that leap into the unknown. Often, sometimes at the sort of unexpected encouragement from someone else or a life circumstance. It's really been quite amazing. I really want to thank you so much, and also to thank UBS for putting on such a really sort of enlightening and inspiring day today. I now am going to turn over to the great and mighty Paula Polito for the closing remarks. I, for one, feel enormously regenerated by today. Thank you.